Hello, Dr. Michael Allen here, and this time with Bernard, of course. Say hello, Bernard. Bernard the bear. Alice the bear. Hello. This time, I'm going to talk about something which is very topical at the moment: strikes. And that's why I've called this video "I'm Alright, Jack." That's right, Bernard. I'm Alright, Jack. There was a movie, a very well-known film of that name, came out in 1959, starring a number of well-known actors, including Peter Sellers as a very dictatorial shop steward who was behind the strike. At that time, in the 50s and 60s, strikes were extremely common, and they have become common again. They were so common that striking was considered to be the English disease, or sometimes called the British disease, the English disease, because there were so many strikes. And it had a serious impact on the economy. Of course, that movie was a satire on the true situation, but like any good satire, it had a very, very strong basis in fact. Had a nugget, more than a nugget, of fact. And as a result, it was a very popular film. There were queues round the block in cinemas when it came out. There's one very big difference between the strikes then and the strikes now. The strike represented in that film was in a private company. And that is really where the origin of strikes comes from. The whole basis of a strike is to put pressure on the employer so that the employer will come to the bargaining table, and this is all part of what's called collective bargaining. You hit the employer where it hurts most, in his pocket, in his wallet. You hit the employer, and that brings the employer round to negotiating. That's the whole idea behind it. But that doesn't work when it comes to public employees, because public employees do not affect their employer in the same way. Their employer is essentially the government. And the government isn't really affected, as a private employer is, by strikes. The people who are affected are members of the public, and they are not the employers. They have no power to negotiate. As a result, strikes by public employees tend to go on longer and are much more serious than strikes in private companies, which have become actually fairly rare. The commonest strikes today, and when I say today, I mean now, December 2022, are amongst railwaymen, nurses, post office workers, Royal Mail, and other public employees. Yes, technically, railway workers are not employed by the government anymore because the railway companies have been privatized. That's true, but it doesn't mean to say that they are actually true private employees. They're not. They are public employees. And it is time that the government face up to these strikes. For some reason in this country, there's always a lingering sense of sympathy for strikers, however unjustifiable. The railwaymen certainly do not justify public sympathy. They are extremely well paid, and they have lots of perks as well, including, in most cases, free travel throughout the world. Free rail travel, at least, throughout the world. And if not throughout the world, then depending, I suppose, on your company, your grade, at least in Britain. And there are several hundred railway workers who earn over £100,000 a year. £100,000 a year. Several hundred of them. The job can entail unsocial hours, and different shifts. But on the whole, the work isn't that onerous. Even driving a train, which is treated as being such a highly skilled job, I would say is a lot easier than driving a bus. You don't have to negotiate the traffic. You don't have to take fares. It's you just follow the signals. If the signals are wrong, that's not your fault. If there's someone jumping in front of your train, you may not be able to stop in time. That can be very traumatic. But other than that, driving a train isn't that difficult nowadays in the days of diesel and even more so electric trains. I'm not talking about the old days of steam, where driving a train was a hard job. It's no longer a hard job. It's a very well-paid job. Very well paid. So don't have undue sympathy for them. Sympathy should be for the passengers, for the public who are inconvenienced by this. And it's a very serious inconvenience. And the trouble is that if wages are increased in accordance with the demands of strikers, if the strikers' wages are increased, that has a knock-on effect on the economy, in particular inflation, so that at the end of the day, the extra money that these railwaymen and others get results in everyone actually getting less, because the money becomes less valuable currency. The one profession which I think gains the greatest amount of sympathy is that of the nurses, and they are not well paid. That's true. Their pay is not particularly high. But they have, I'm speaking now at the end of December 2022, they have been offered, I think it is a 9.5% increase, which is just below inflation at the moment, which they've turned down. There is a lot of talk by those supporting strikers about human rights, and even citing the European Convention on Human Rights.